Hi, everybody. I'm Debbie Levitt from Delta CX. We're a full service CX and UX consulting firm and agency, and I'm here to tell you the minimum viable presentation today of my improving agility by using customers' definitions of quality and done. This talk will run about a half hour, and then I'll see everybody over in the Q&A. Delta CX is my full service agency. You're welcome to check it out. And of course, clients like to call me Mary Poppins because I fly in, fix everything I can, sing a few songs, and fly away to where I'm needed next. If you have any questions for me and we don't get to them today, my email is on every slide. Please reach out to me. I love answering questions, no charge. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Debbie Levitt, this with more makeup and Photoshop. And I also broadcast on YouTube, usually live 4 times a week. So check me out at Delta CX. You'll also notice I have a little camera icon coming up. That means no more animations. Great time to screenshot or take a picture. And also note that I'm saying CX where you might expect to hear UX. They're nearly the same thing, but CX has risen up the last few years as a broader and more appropriate term for what we do. So I'll explain a little bit more about that later. Agile has definitions of done and quality that are supposed to be about making sure the product is done right and is high quality. In our Agile world, how do we define quality? Velocity, productivity, and efficiency, improved software performance, few or no bugs, thanks to the previous speaker, Julia, meet stakeholder requirements. What about our definition of done? We did what we planned, it fit business objectives, it's coded, tested, documented, and deployable. There's something huge missing here. Does our product match our users' and customers' definitions of quality or done? Does it fit their tasks and needs? Did the system optimize or complicate a workflow? If engineering's code is high quality and it feels done, but the concept doesn't match what customers needed, is it still quality? Is it done? Or was all of that time spent engineering the wrong so-called solution a waste of time and budget? When we're disconnected from how our users and customers define quality and done, we're probably going down the wrong path. We fill our world with catchy sayings that we use as excuses when we're not agile, lean, or building what customers would give 5 stars out of 5, like just ship it, often without knowing if it's the right solution for our customers. We'll fix it later. How often do we fix it later? When is later? What will we have to delay and what will it cost? Users will have to figure it out, or they'll flood you with support tickets, or they'll cancel, leave, or give up. Fail fast. There's nothing cool about failing fast or slowly when real paying or trial customers suffer with your failure. If you're not embarrassed, you shipped too late. Does that mean our goal is to be embarrassed by our product? Most of us would rather feel proud that our product is a great match to customers' needs and tasks. Lean is the least we can do to get to the next step. Lean disagrees. This is a bastardization of lean that seemed to come from the Lean Startup book. But anyone who has studied traditional lean or Lean Six Sigma knows that lean is about identifying and cutting waste. Fake lean is wasteful and takes us down wrong paths, which means we should cut fake lean for being wasteful. Move fast and break things. Sure, only if you fix those things before the public is struggling with them. It's good enough for the engineering team, for stakeholders, or for our paying trial or real customers. We've been experimenting with speed over quality methods now for years, and it should be pretty clear from our project costs, ROI, customer support tickets, tweets about us, our stock price, and other hints. And it's probably not always working. We must stop praying to the false gods of speed and give your customers broken things. We must stop using any of these as excuses for low efforts or failures. We're supposed to be focusing on Agile Manifesto Principle number 1, our highest priority is customer satisfaction. When I speak at engineering, agile, and lean conferences, I ask the audience full of engineers to raise their hands if they've ever known while building something that it wasn't right for target users. I can't see you, but go ahead and raise your hand. Every hand goes up. They know they're building something that's of poor quality that might have to be fixed or undone later, but nobody feels empowered to say something. Like assembly line robots, they're being judged by how much they got done. Creating a higher quality product means spending more time and money up front. Instead, someone declares, we'll fix it later. We hide that fix later in another budget and call the original project that caused the problems a success. And isn't it amazing that we never have time to create a better product now, but we'll have time later to stop a future project to fix this old one? If our systems aren't right for every user interacting with them, can we congratulate ourselves for having an efficient engineering process? If Agile is supposed to be about welcoming change, even late in the game, why do we reward silence and avoid holding people accountable for disaster projects? Workers and teams who are afraid to stop a project that's likely to fail signify a culture problem that's going to need improvement. All the customer knows is the customer experience. That's it. They don't see if you had 1,000 developers. They don't know if you had an agile mindset, a project mindset, a product mindset, or any other mindset or religion. What's the last website, app, or system you used that you really loved? It solved your problems, it helped you get your tasks done efficiently. It's hard to think of one, isn't it? Would your users put your products and services on the list of what they really love? When you use a system that frustrates you, you're probably not thinking, I wonder how many sprints they spent on that. When something doesn't work the way you expected it to, you're probably thinking, who built this junk? And that's a good question. Who researched this with users like you to learn your habits, motivations, needs, tasks, and then architect and design for those? Was this tested on people like you before it was unleashed on the public? In the old days, when what the customer needed didn't overlap what the business wanted to do or sell people, you built what the business wanted. You hired more marketing and salespeople to figure out how you were going to make people think they wanted this. Those are the dinosaur days, but they're not extinct just yet. Therefore, instead of our Venn diagram looking like customers' needs and business goals are on two different islands, we must bring these together. That's not done by pushing customers into what we think we can sell them or what we can force or trick them into doing. It's done by shifting business goals, strategies, and initiatives to match our customers. It's done by making customer centricity part of our strategy. And it's done by CX and UX. Mitigating risk. The main process most CX and UX practitioners use is called user-centered design, UCD. You might see this as human-centered design, HCD. It has multiple phases, including research, content strategy, information architecture, interaction design, usability testing, and iteration. Each phase has multiple tasks that can be done. CX professionals must approach this process strategically, deciding which tasks are needed, how long those will take, in what order we'll do them, and what resources are required. Order does matter here because each phase that we have is informed by phases that came before it. Our research informs everything we do later. Information architecture informs interaction design. You'll also hear a lot about models that say learn, build, test. That's an oversimplification based on what it really takes to learn, build, and test. But learning, building, testing, and improving are baked into our process. You're already familiar with what we call interaction design. That's our wireframes, prototypes, and other blueprints of how this lays out, how this works, and how people interact with it. But you might not know about all the other phases of our process that make that interaction design work good. If we care about quality, we care about the quality of the process and the outcomes it can create. It's also why when we're asked to just guess at the build phase and make some wireframes, often without research or testing, it's another high risk guessing adventure that's likely to lead our project or company down the wrong path. It's the lean sin of underutilized talent when we only budget enough time for CX or UX to guess at screens when there's so much risk mitigating science and technique in our process. Research is the most important CX phase. It's not user-centered without users. We primarily want to observe them, since you can learn a lot more about how what people do, who they are, their tasks, needs, and goals by watching them. Interviews are excellent when we ask the right questions the right ways, but since what people say and what people do aren't always the same, observational studies are best. Statistics and quantitative data are nice, but there's no substitute for observing and interviewing users, deeply understanding them, and getting qualitative data. We want to know the what and why and how, not just the how many. Every step of research is important. Planning, writing interview and task guides, recruiting participants, executing the research, interpreting it, evaluating what we found, and arriving on actionable insights. You can see how different this is from, we asked a few users what they want and we're building what they said. Researchers are problem-finding detectives who find the root causes and all of their outcomes and consequences. CX and UX are just basically your business intelligence team. Usability testing happens during our process and before engineering writes a line of code. We need to make sure that the idea and its execution are fantastic for our target users. We don't want engineering to build it until we're sure this is what should be built. Testing is the QA of CX. We don't skimp on or exclude QA testing for our code, even when developers are really smart and talented. So why would we rush out untested product concepts? Usability testing will bring to light any flaws, giving CX the chance to iterate on ideas. Iteration and refinement are a mini cycle of their own. Build, test, learn. You can also understand why if you see UX as wireframing some screens, which is one task from one phase of user-centered design, a broader term like CX might help people understand better the whole of what we do. You can also see how saying CX or UX is like saying engineering. It's not just one single thing. It's multiple jobs, phases, and tasks that you want done by qualified specialists. Our coworkers, managers, leaders, and executives very rarely see the science and technique or the strategy that go into our work. They see wireframes, pretty screens, sketches, whiteboards, and walls of sticky notes. So they think UX makes screens. Anybody can make wireframes and decide how this will look and work. My phases of proficiency model is really an iceberg where people are used to just seeing the tip of the iceberg without understanding what's going on below the surface. The iceberg model explains why Agile and Scrum coaches keep telling me that UX has easy work that anybody can do, like paper prototypes. This is so easy anybody can do it means we're in building block land, ignoring the quality of the work being done and ignoring the body of the iceberg, the cognitive psychology, interaction design, information architecture, accessibility, and other concepts, best practices, and skills that we need to create excellent interaction designs. Hey, I learned some basic programming in 1979. I learned HTML in 1995. I'm passionate about engineering, so I can code to production, right? Or am I just at the building blocks phase of proficiency? If you're squirming in your seat at the idea of your engineers having to work with my code or check it, then you know what CX and UX are thinking every time we hear that anybody can do our work, or that engineers and product managers making some wireframes will be good enough for customers. So how do we bring customer centricity into Agile and improve our agility? In various flavors of Agile, CX is often a square peg someone is either trying to hammer into a round hole or it's being taken off the board and thrown away for not fitting in. Siloed, excluded. We work differently than engineering, different processes and tasks, different goals. Instead of working to understand that and improve processes and collaboration, flavors of Agile often try to control CX and UX. This is going to cause conflict, completely avoidable conflict. It wouldn't make any sense for any one domain to demand that other domains plan, think, prioritize, or work like they do. This guy on LinkedIn wrote that UX is just like development because we both have strategies, tactical things, deadlines, and dependencies. Well, that makes nearly everything on the planet like development. He said that developers have to do the UX while waiting for the UX team to ideate in their ivory tower. We are never going to collaborate well or have the culture DevOps dreams of if this is how developers see UX. We're never going to prioritize customer satisfaction if engineers can't respect the risk mitigating work we're doing. Great teamwork requires understanding what each other does, valuing that, and respecting each other. Someone who thinks I'm in an ivory tower disconnected from reality has no idea what my job is supposed to be and doesn't care. Because all of this is the UX. This engineer is sure that he and his buddies can guess at it. Engineers are rarely doing the UX well, and they're probably not doing the UX based on customers' definitions of quality and done. Every minute your developer spends guessing at the UX is a minute he didn't spend on his own story points. And I have a zillion screenshots like this, many from Agile and Scrum trainers bitching me out publicly on LinkedIn when I dare ask them to explain exactly, step by step, how UX specialists or customer centricity fits into their models. They don't have a good answer, so they lash out with personal attacks. I don't take it personally, and their games don't bother me, but this should be unacceptable behavior from any worker or consultant at your company. This is why we can't have nice things. This common template for sprint goals says our focus is on achievement or outcome. We believe it delivers benefit or impact to customer. This will be confirmed when event happens. Supposedly, this helps teams focus on users and outcomes, but that's not a guarantee, mostly because of one risky word here. Did you catch it? Believe. Imagine work goals being based on something someone believes, a guess or assumption. Shouldn't we know it delivers certain benefits because the concept has been validated and vetted before we're planning engineering sprints around it? Believing, assuming, and being reactive aren't agile or lean. Six Sigma would be ashamed of you. Every time Agile says that we want feedback from customers or we want to know if users find value in the features, Agile's really talking about CX research work. Our researchers generate knowledge about people and systems. They run studies to evaluate concepts. Every time we notice we are guessing, assuming, hypothesizing, making things up, or working based on what someone believes, we should let CX researchers study whatever it is so that we can know. Traditional flavors of Agile are correct in saying that we must collect feedback from customers to know if our product has value and is considered high quality by users. But Agile and the MVP model imagine that we have to collect that feedback after releasing our product when our risks and costs are highest. Since Agile tends to exclude CX and UX processes and professionals, Agile doesn't realize that we can get that feedback through early concept testing of CX prototypes. Teams claiming to be agile burn time and money to learn very late in the game that we've gone in the wrong direction. Learning this late that we need to fix or rework our product is really waterfall in disguise. Agile can pride itself on doing smaller batches of work and releasing products more frequently, but if you're continuously releasing garbage and not finding flaws until weeks or months later, your boat has just gone over the waterfall. The very earliest moments of project planning must already be focused on customers' needs. CX teammates should be part of project planning before we approve features that have low or no customer value. We used to do this. It was called R&D, research and development. Someone decided that R&D wasn't as cool as pretending we were a startup and just rushing out guesses. Focusing on faster, faster, faster has lowered product quality and customer satisfaction. Think of CX as your lower cost and faster R&D team. If you have an R&D team, we'd love to partner with them. We must get back to believing in R&D and R before D. Therefore, imagine if our sprint goals looked more like this. Our focus is on user or customer outcome. CX or UX has confirmed that it delivers benefit to customer. This benefit will be measured by KPI or metric. In the old version, we're hoping to later confirm that there was a benefit to the customer. There might not have been, and you will find that out really late and after a lot of expensive engineering time. CX can confirm that earlier. Now we're not hoping to find out later if something delivered benefits to customers. Now we're just going to measure how much success or failure we had. We often hear that UX isn't agile. This is easily explained. Let's imagine a team of 4 developers and 2 QA professionals, and they want 4 sprints of work, which is normal. When UX wants 8 weeks of work to do something, this is sacrilegious. People clutch their pearls and cry that UX must be bloated, old-fashioned, and waterfall. Nobody tells engineering that needing 8 weeks to do something isn't agile or lean. Nobody called it waterfall. Nobody called it big engineering up front. At most companies where I've worked, my time was split between 3 projects. So you get 1/3 of my work week. Not only do you expect something in days or a sprint, but you expect it from 1/3 of one person. And at many companies that I've worked at, I've had a bottleneck of having only 2 or 4 CX or UX researchers supporting every project the entire department is doing. This staffing imbalance is completely inefficient and will never be agile. Instead of fixing this, agile coaches, scrum trainers, and engineering leads call the tasks I need to do my job well big design up front. They decided that 8 weeks for engineering is fine, but 8 weeks for my team is evil, wrong, and must be avoided. You want 4 sprints for 6 engineers, but you give 1/3 of one UX worker 2 days? This is why your customers can't have nice things. We should pursue a better way to work together and enhance agility. My Delta CX model suggests that CX architects work in pairs. Even one 100% dedicated person would be an upgrade from the 1/3 of a person you probably get now. This is the person who handles information architecture, interaction design, and prototyping. When hiring, we assess them for all of these skills. Pretty screens on a crappy system can still make customers unhappy. We have to do a better job selecting more qualified workers than we tend to now. Now think of this as adding one person to the Agile team. If you have the pair, they will share a seat with the team, but you'll get twice the work and twice the speed out of them. Now you have that CX, UX, or design skill, whatever you want to call it, on the team as nearly every flavor of Agile suggests, except that you'll have someone actually competent and efficient at it. The CX architect pair has their own research team. Hire someone with 5 or 6 or more years of specialized research experience and team them up with 2 junior researchers. Since these are specialist jobs, we can't just ask a BA to do some research. You can't hire research newbies alone without a very experienced person to lead and support them. You don't have to interface with researchers much. The CX architects run most of the interference on that. The 5 CX professionals plus others from the CX department, like a visual designer and copywriter, would be their own team. Now you've got a ratio of 5 CX architects and researchers to 6 engineers. Putting a larger and more qualified CX team on projects would allow them to be more efficient. Where would you get the budget for this? You would get it from what you save in engineering rework, customer support not having to help people so much, and sales enjoying attracting and retaining more customers. If marketing has to spend more money promoting a mediocre product, they would save money when our product is a better natural match to customers. I can show you this graphic on how CX needs to be 2 or more sprints ahead of engineering. I can tell you how CX needs to start before engineering, because if we're populating the backlog with finalized designs, we have to start ahead of you. I can call what we do working in sprints, I can call it days. I wrote a whole book on this and it already needs a rewrite. I can show you a variety of models of how CX and UX work with Agile, but I can make this really easy for you because all 7 models on this screen say the same thing. CX is on its own track. We're not working on the same stories engineering is working on in the same sprint. We're at least 2 sprints ahead, preferably 4 or more. Once you can accept that Agile is about a predictable and reliable assembly line, we can all exhale, put CX on its own track, cut the conflict and control, and get back to work. In fact, no other domain is on engineering's track. Product made a prioritized roadmap well before sprint 0 or 1, and nobody called that big product up front. We make time for all kinds of strategy, planning, programming, prioritizing, estimating, research, and more, and nobody calls this big planning up front. Engineering shouldn't control CX. We're on our own track. Let's take some action. We've got to drop faster, 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 and work smarter. We must proactively recognize and mitigate risk, better planning up front, throw away surveys and guesses about who our users are and what we imagine they need. Better qualitative research data helps us make better customer, product, and feature decisions, better strategies, initiatives, and tactical approaches. There's nothing that I found in agility or lean that says, do not spend extra time up front to do a better job the first time. Agile welcomes customer feedback-driven requirements and changing as we need to. Lean welcomes recognizing problems early, understanding their root causes, and eliminating waste and defects, both in our internal processes and the user's experiences. I also believe that if you check the lean definition of value added, it says you've got to get it right the first time. So architecting for our customers' needs and tasks and being agile shouldn't be the polar opposites they often are now. No matter what an agile coach, scrum master, or stakeholder declares, the customer decides what is quality, done, and good enough. Lean says that the customer decides the value of the product or feature. If you don't use customers' definitions of quality or done, you're going to have to deal later with failures. All the mindsets and ceremonies on the planet won't matter if we're not delivering products that are easy to learn, easy to use, and matching customers' needs. Joe Rohde, recently retired senior vice president at Walt Disney Imagineering, said a few years ago, one should not be asking the question, how little can we get away with, but rather, how much can we afford to do to be really impressive? This is the quote to hang on the wall, and it's how we start reinventing the customer experience. And at New York speed, I finished just about in time. So remember, chances are nobody at your company knows how to correctly assess CX and UX skills. Chances are you're hiring less qualified people than you need. I just want to mention I released a completely free HR training video course series. You're not even put on a mailing list. You can find it on the Delta CX website, I think under training. Please check it out. Show it to your HR people, your recruiters, your hiring managers. We need to hire the right people and make better jobs. So with that, I guess I'll stop my presentation and jump over to the other room to take your questions. Thanks and see you on the interwebs.